Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. James is devastated when he finds Diep, but she has lost her memory and is panicked when she meets him. Will they be able to overcome this challenge? Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out. The ringing of the alarm clock echoed loudly, signaling the start of a new day. Diep slowly opened her eyes, feeling a heavy pressure at her head, a sharp pain lingering. She anxiously sat up, looking around, but everything seemed unfamiliar. This wasn't a place she knew. A sense of confusion overwhelmed her. She didn't remember where she was, and especially, she didn't know who she was. A middle-aged woman appeared, with a gentle face and gray hair. She smiled softly, but Diep only felt estranged and disoriented. "Are you awake?" the woman said, but Diep stayed silent, her eyes lost, her hands trembling as she placed them on the stiff bed. She couldn't understand why this woman called her daughter or who she was in her life. "Don't you remember?" the woman asked gently, her voice filled with concern. Diep shook her head, her heart pounding as if it would burst. She didn't remember anything. All faces, all places, everything was blurry. The grandmother sat down beside the bed, looking at Diep with compassionate eyes. "Your mother passed away a long time ago. You've lived with me since you were little," she said softly. But Diep felt nothing from those words, only a vague fear rising in her chest. "Why didn't I remember anything? I'll take care of you. Don't worry, everything will be fine," the grandmother continued. But no matter how much she tried to comfort Diep, the young woman only felt lost. She didn't know who this woman was, she didn't understand why she was taking care of her, and most of all, she didn't understand why everything was so unfamiliar. The feeling of panic grew stronger inside her. The grandmother stood up and gently reached into the wardrobe to pull out a shirt for Diep. "Change your clothes, then you can eat something. I've prepared it already," she said. But Diep couldn't hold back the feeling of losing all her memories. She simply sat still, her eyes wide open, but she couldn't clearly see anything at all. The soft morning light filtered into the room, casting a gentle glow as if offering a small comfort in the tense atmosphere. Mr. Ly sat across from James, his gaze fixed intently on the table, deep in thought. James sat quietly, his face tired but determined. Both knew that this investigation would not be simple. The case involving Diep, a girl who had lost her memory, was a complicated puzzle. "We have to find Diep no matter what happened to her. But the situation is complicated now," Mr. Ly said, lightly tapping the wooden table. "I feel like this case is more than just her memory loss." James sighed, his eyes gliding over the documents on the table, all related to the case. "I know. She's not just suffering from memory loss. Someone's hiding something, Mr. Ly." James felt a suffocating frustration. He had once known Diep as a strong woman, but now she was a stranger, unable to remember him or their past together. James felt like he had failed. A part of him couldn't accept this truth. "We must be careful. If someone is behind this, we need to find him before he harms Diep further," Mr. Ly continued, his voice calm, but he too couldn't escape the worry in his heart. James nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes to uncover the truth." The tension in the air rose. James stood up and walked out, his heart heavy. Thoughts swirled in his mind, endless and chaotic. Diep, the woman he had once loved and protected, was now an unsolved mystery. He knew what he had to do, but would he be able to find her before it was too late? The morning light slowly faded as the sounds of life outside filled the air. But inside Diep's mind, everything felt strange and chaotic. She sat quietly by the window, the light from outside spilling in, making the room brighter, yet failing to lift the shadow in her heart. Vague memories began to appear, but they couldn't form a coherent story. Diep turned to look at her grandmother, who was still preparing food for her. The woman smiled, but that smile couldn't ease the feeling of being lost inside her. "I don't remember anything. Why am I here?" Diep whispered, her voice trembling, as if afraid to face the truth about herself. The grandmother paused, her gaze filled with compassion but also concern. "Don't worry, you'll remember. I'll always be here for you," she said gently. But Diep only felt the growing vagueness inside her. The grandmother's words couldn't erase the fear within her, and the feeling of not belonging here only became clearer. Diep stood up and walked around the room, trying to calm her mind. Every step she took felt like a journey to find herself. But as she looked at the items in the room, the memories remained broken fragments. Nothing was truly clear. She could sense a change within her, but couldn't grasp its meaning. Suddenly, Diep turned around, her eyes landing on the mirror hanging on the wall. A strange woman looked back at her from the mirror, but Diep couldn't recognize who she was. The feeling of estrangement and confusion became even more intense. "Is this me?" Diep asked herself, but couldn't find an answer. "Are you okay?" the grandmother called, but Diep couldn't respond. She felt the rising fear inside her like a violent wave, and deep down, she didn't know who she could turn to or what she was searching for. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, as though there was something unsaid hanging in the air. Diep sat on a chair next to the table, her hands clenched tightly. The feeling of being lost still didn't leave her, but there was something strange. She felt a vague connection with the woman sitting across from her, the one who had been caring for her all this time. "Haki," Diep suddenly uttered, as though the name held some special meaning. But immediately she shook her head, unsure why the name surfaced. The grandmother, sitting nearby, looked at Diep with a concerned gaze. "Haki? Do you remember this person?" she asked, suspicion evident on her face. Diep looked at her for a moment, trying to figure out if Haki was someone from her past. But her memories were like fragmented pieces, impossible to fit together into a complete picture. The faint light from the window filtered in, casting the room in an ethereal glow. A feeling of suffocation filled Diep's heart. She couldn't endure this confusion any longer. She stood up and walked outside, hoping to find some peace in the vastness of the forest ahead. Suddenly, a figure appeared before Diep. Haki, the woman she couldn't remember, standing there, watching her with a contemplative gaze. "Haki, is she my friend?" Diep asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. She felt that this name was an important part of her memory, but she couldn't recall the story behind this woman. Haki looked at her deeply, then gently shook her head. "I'm your friend, but maybe you've forgotten me. I won't make you confused," she said, her voice soft but full of unspoken meaning. The feeling of being lost engulfed Diep once again, but she couldn't deny that there was a strong connection somewhere, even if it was too vague to be expressed. Haki stepped closer to her, gently placing a hand on Diep's shoulder. "Don't worry. Everything will be okay," Haki whispered, but it couldn't fully dispel the worries brewing inside Diep's heart. Diep's mind returned to its state of confusion. She could feel Haki's presence, but she couldn't reach her memories. Deep down, she wondered if she would ever find these missing pieces again. Memories lost, truths hidden, and she was the only one who couldn't remember it all. The night had fallen. The air was fresh, but inside Diep's heart, there was an indescribable heaviness. She sat by the window, the faint light from the oil lamp on the table barely illuminating the dark corners of the room. In her mind, the fragmented pieces of memories still couldn't be pieced together. A feeling of discomfort, a sensation of being trapped between two worlds, the past and the present. "Grandma, do you know why I feel like this?" Diep asked, her voice breaking. She couldn't understand why she felt such a deep sense of loss, even though her grandmother had been by her side, caring for her all this time. The grandmother sat beside her, her hand gently stroking Diep's hair. "You've been hurt a lot, but I believe you'll remember," she replied, but there was a hint of worry in her gaze. Diep looked at her, her eyes filled with confusion, as if she was trying to find something. A truth, a memory, a part of herself. The feeling of being lost among the tangled emotions overwhelmed Diep. She stood up and walked around the room, trying to find some peace for her troubled soul. But the more she walked, the more it felt like she was lost in a maze with no way out. Vague images returned. A large house, a familiar road, and a man, someone she couldn't remember. Suddenly, a voice called from outside the door, "Diep!" "What's wrong?" Diep shuddered, a chill running down her spine. James, the man she didn't recognize but strangely felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity with, was standing in front of her. Vague memories of him rushed back, but they still couldn't form a complete story. Diep looked at him, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling, as though she was trying to find the truth in his eyes. James stood still, his gaze calm but filled with concern. "Don't you recognize me?" he asked, his voice deep but full of worry. Diep didn't answer. She just looked at him blankly. The feeling of panic spread within her as she realized she couldn't remember her own memories. Who was James? And why did she feel this way? In that brief moment, in the stillness of the room, Diep felt as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff with no way to turn back. She felt like everything she knew about herself, about her past, was slowly slipping away into nothingness. The pieces of her memories continued to swirl, unable to find a stopping point. The entire space grew silent, only the sound of Diep's footsteps echoing in the dark house. She stood by the window, gazing outside but seeing nothing clearly, just a foggy night, much like the state of her mind at that moment. The vague memories remained like scattered fragments that couldn't be pieced together, and the more time passed, the more she felt herself drifting, lost among nameless emotions. "Grandma, why can't I remember anything?" Diep asked her grandmother, her voice filled with confusion. She had tried, but the memories still eluded her like a ghost she couldn't grasp. Her grandmother sat nearby, her eyes filled with worry, but she tried to comfort Diep with a gentle smile. "You'll remember eventually, I believe that," she said, but her voice couldn't mask the anxiety in her eyes. Diep looked at her, feeling both touched and pained. She remembered her grandmother but couldn't remember herself. She felt as if she were living in a world where everything around her seemed strange. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the door. Diep turned, her heart racing as she realized it might be the one person she had been waiting for, James. She couldn't explain why, but deep inside, she always felt the urge to seek him out. This strange connection made it impossible for her to understand, but she knew that he held an important place in her life. "James," Diep whispered, but her voice caught in her throat. She wanted to call out to him, but she didn't know what to do with the overwhelming emotions rising within her. The door opened and James stepped in. He looked at her with eyes full of concern, but also hesitation, as if unsure where to start. "How are you?" James asked, his voice warm yet full of care. "I'm fine, don't worry," Diep replied, though the unease was clear on her face. She still couldn't find her memories, and this feeling made her feel as though she were in another world, where everything was unfamiliar. James stepped closer and gently took Diep's hand. "I know you're really worried, but I promise you, I'll always be here," he said, his eyes filled with determination and affection. "You'll remember everything. I'll help you." Diep looked at James, feeling a confusing mixture of emotions. She couldn't remember who he was, but the sense of safety she felt when she was with him was undeniable. Her memories might be blurry, but the connection between them couldn't be erased. Diep knew there was a promise. Something they had shared before everything changed. And although she couldn't remember it, she knew James would be the one to help her find it. The darkness outside couldn't overshadow the faint light from the oil lamp inside the small room. Diep still sat there, amidst the hazy shadows of lost memories, and despite whatever James said, she still felt like her past was an unopened book. She knew something important had happened, but her memory seemed like a foggy veil, impossible to lift. "How do you feel now?" James gently asked as he sat down beside her. Diep didn't respond immediately, sitting silently. She felt a deep contradiction within herself. Her mind couldn't recall anything, but her heart stirred with a powerful emotion, a deep affection for James. She looked at him, her eyes deep as if seeking answers in his gaze. "I won't leave you," James continued, his voice firm but full of tenderness. "I'll help you remember everything. Do you trust me?" Diep looked at him, unsure of how to answer. Everything was too chaotic for her, and the feeling of loss seemed to overshadow everything. She couldn't remember her past, but she could sense that a part of her, deep within her soul, was yearning to find something important. "I don't know, I can't remember, but I feel like I have to find something important," Diep said, her voice weak yet determined. She sighed, her eyes full of uncertainty. "Maybe I just need more time." James looked at her, his gaze gentle but resolute. He knew that nothing could happen easily. The loss Diep felt wasn't just about her memory, but about her losing a part of herself. And he understood that to help her, he would need patience and to step into the darkness where she was stuck. "I'll wait for you," James replied, his voice calm but full of certainty. "I promise I'll always be here, whenever you need me." Diep felt warmth from James' promise, even though she couldn't fully understand its meaning yet. But she knew one thing, that at this moment, she wasn't alone anymore. James' promise was like a flicker of light amidst the vast darkness in her mind. She nodded gently, then lowered her head, her hands clenched tight as if holding on to the only certainty she had right now: James' promise. Even though everything around her seemed unclear, part of her still believed that if she didn't give up, everything would eventually become clearer. The light from the oil lamp still flickered in the quiet night, and in this space, both James and Diep felt that they had embarked on a new journey. A journey to reclaim the memories and emotions they had lost. The story is about James, who finds Diep after a long search. However, Diep has lost her memory and doesn't recognize James, panicking when they meet. Despite this, James is determined not to give up, promising to help her remember everything. She feels his strong affection but is overwhelmed and scared by her blurry memories. While Diep gradually finds peace and hope, James remains persistent, staying by her side, caring for her, and encouraging her. Will they be able to overcome the pain of loss and rediscover love and the memories she's forgotten? The story is an emotional journey of persistence, love, and waiting.